Hello, my friends, and welcome to Friday Live with the Omens. I'm Mimi. I am the proprietress of Gaia Blooming. I bring you your daily astrology videos, and today we are talking throat chakra, which I'm so excited as my throat chakra decides to get hoarse while speaking. I'm really excited to dig into this because I think that this is one of the most I don't know, challenged chakras. So with that, I will turn you over to Ryan and Nicole.
I am Ryan and I am opening my throat chakra for today's video. Yeah, that's good for me. Go ahead.
How do I follow that?
Top that. So top that.
So if you never watched Teen Wolf, you have no idea
Teen
what we're
Witch.
doing. Teen Witch.
Teen Wolf is good too, but no rapping in Teen Wolf that I'm aware of.
No. I'm Nicole Oman, and I am a life coach and shaman healer, all of the things.
Shaman.
And I help you really unravel the depth of what's going on so you can see at the core of your soul.
Just that.
Only that. That's all. And so today we're going to unravel the root chakra, and I think it seems like we're all here. And the roots. Did I say root? Throat.
Mercury retrograde.
Great brain. Thank you for catching me. Maybe we should start with the meditation so we can get our throats open and ready.
That sounds like a wonderful idea. All right, everybody, it's time to sit up straight. Pull your shoulders back, close your mouth.
Keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle at all times.
Por favor, mantengas de las ondas de las cosas. All right, guys, close your eyes. Close your mouth. Start to breathe through your nose. Feel the air as it moves through your nostrils. Feel the air as it moves through your throat. Feel the air as it moves into your chest. Feel the energy drop down into your belly. Feel the air pulling down into your pelvis. Feel the energy drawing down and grounding into your base. And gently guide your awareness back into your throat. Right into the center of your voice box. Imagine a tiny ball of bright blue light hovering right inside the center of your throat. And with each exhale, we're going to increase the size of the ball. To the size of a golf ball. To the size of a softball. to the size of a basketball. To the size of a beach ball. To the size of your entire body. You are now completely encapsulated in bright, blue, purifying light. Allow the energy of the throat chakra to cleanse and purify, to open up your ears to hear, to open up your voice to speak, to open the energy to the community with honest integrity. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Come back to this space and time.
Well, I'm ready now. Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. Would you love to dig into the throat chakra and all of its various intricacies to kick us off?
Sure. It's apropos that you are experiencing a little phlegm in the throat, and there's some energy shifting and moving. That is definitely part of the throat chakra. I think the first thing I'd like to address is that there's a misconception, obviously, that the throat chakra is just the throat, right? It's actually the throat, the mouth, the ears, and the nose. So it's just kind of this whole, like, from the eyes down to the chest. So if you think about from your collarbone up to your eyes is kind of really the domain of the throat chakra. I always think of it as the ears, nose, and throat doctor. Which I don't, do they still have that? Ears, nose, and throat doctor? That was a thing like in the 80s and 90s. I remember I was like, that's very strange and specific, but okay.
It's the throat chakra doctor.
Yeah, the throat chakra doctor. But yeah, it's this kind of all this area here. So, if you're, especially during the holidays and recovery from the holidays, people are experiencing some congestion up here, some mouth sores or dryness of mouth, the throat being itchy or dry, or, losing your voice, getting, some itchiness in the ears, or maybe even some ringing, some tinnitus in the ears. These are all throat chakra issues. These are all things that could pop up. And the throat chakra is called Vishuddha, right? Which means purification or purity. And that is because this area kind of purifies the air, and not just the air, but the energy that we receive. So when we're receiving energy through our ears, through our nose, through our mouth, in the form of air or in the form of sound, then if there's some pollutants or toxins in that energy, then it will get trapped in these areas. And that's why people usually start to feel a cold come on in their ears, their nose, or their throat. It's all because that's the system your body uses to purify as it's receiving those energies and whatnot. So during the holidays, some folks might have received some toxicity from friends or family or just the world in general.
Or your food. Like,
Yeah.
We've been drinking and eating sugars and things like that. It's trying to process everything that we went through. And the reason why we drink more alcohol during the holidays is probably because we have to deal with all the stresses of the holidays, family and money, and, like all the things that are being pulled on us. So it overtaxes this area.
Yeah, I had a real
kills
big
the
issue.
immune system.
I had a real big issue, and I know Mercury's in retrograde, and that can bring up some communication stuff as well. So I had a real big issue with being able to feel like I'm being heard during the holidays. My family was visiting, so my mother and my stepfather were visiting, and my stepfather and I have a bit of a checkered past, especially when it comes to communication, and that reared its ugly head at one point while he was here. And the whole time, I can even feel my throat right now energetically closing on me as I start to talk about this experience, and my ears feeling a little funny. But yeah, that whole time, it just, it was like people were trying to tell me things and kept telling me that I wasn't listening. And I was like, you're not listening to me. It was very much this like battle for who's being heard. And I think I'm probably not alone in that experience, especially during the holidays. So for those of you who have gone through that, a little throat chakra healing and cleansing is probably overdue.
actually makes me think of my childhood. I used to get so many ear infections when I was little. And that's been one of my ongoing things as an adult, not feeling heard or understood. So fascinating, because I now know what I can't eat. I ate wheat when I was little, and if I start eating wheat as an adult, I will get ear infections still. Like, I can feel it coming out. I'm like, don't do that. So I stay away. To keep myself flowing, pure here. But that is an ongoing thing that I am working on, feeling understood, feeling heard, um, letting my voice come out. Which is funny, because I know that I show up every day, like on camera, but it's still something that I definitely have to work on. Interesting, because when I was thinking about the throat chakra and where I wanted to go with it and just all of that, I had several things come up, but one of them, I'm reading a book right now. It's historical fiction by Kathleen McGowan. It's called The Boleyn Heresy. It's about Anne Boleyn. Kathleen McGowan is one of my favorite authors because she does amazing historical digs, finding out all kinds of real information, and then she puts it to fiction. Like, she'll make up the story that goes along with it, but she brings forth like truth through her work. And I encourage you to check her out. But in all of her books, it talks so much about how much the feminine was not able to talk. In fact, in this book, I forget who it was Marguerite something, had written a book about, I think, Jesus, or something like that. And at first, this was probably in like the 12th or 13th century that this happened. At first, and this is part of the true part, at first, the people who read it thought a man had written it. And so they're like, this book is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as it was found out that a female had written it, she was hung for treason, and everybody's suddenly ripping it apart, like, oh, this isn't true, none of this is true. And I have had moments in my healing journey where I've gone into other lifetimes of myself and had throat activations happen. I went through a point in my life where I was waking up in the middle of the night going, like every night. And through some physical body work, we discovered it was another lifetime where my throat had been slit and a scream had been stuck in there. And as soon as we kind of brought it through, I stopped waking up like in the middle of the night. And I think there's so many of us in this world that have these things, whether it's feeling misunderstood in this lifetime, not feeling safe to speak your truth in this lifetime, having weird throat, ear ailments in this lifetime, and not even knowing where they stem from. So I think that this is such an important chakra energy to work with, tend to, because I think speaking our truths is like fundamental to being ourselves and freedom.
Yeah, definitely. Didn't Anne Boleyn, she was either decapitated or hung, right?
She was, her head got chopped off.
Yeah. So there's a lot of throat neck stuff going on here. People being hung, people's throats being cut, people being decapitated. All of this energy is like shut down the voice of the feminine. Shut it down. We don't want to hear it.
Yeah. If you are into this work at this period of time, or any period of time, there is a very high likelihood that in a past life, you were shut down. You were either, like Ryan said, hung, beheaded, slit, because they are going after, do not speak that. That is blasphemy, whatever, because it wasn't going in alignment with the narrative that they were saying. And it's still going on.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Now we're doing it a little differently, right? So we're
cancel.
There's a big, huge cancel culture, right? Like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to even put that in my, so let's cancel you so I am safe.
Or at least I feel safe.
Or at least I feel safe. It's a lot about, more than anything, it's about the I believe it's about the illusion of safety or the illusion of like things being a certain way. And I don't want you to pop my bubble, so please.
La 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 la. Also throat chakra. La, 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 la.
So when we're another thing that happens that isn't as intense as getting your head chopped off is banishment or being ostracized from your community.
Yeah, awesome.
And so what begins to happen is we feel shame, we feel isolated, we feel and sometimes we isolate ourselves because if we see how other people are being treated. I know that when things were going on in 2020, I was like, why am I going to speak when people aren't really wanting to listen? Everybody's in reactionary mode. And so I went into a state of my own inner isolation, but that also put me into a cocoon-like state. But what's really interesting is once you get used to being in this cocoon-like state or isolated, it's very hard to learn how to find that courage to speak again or know when people are ready to hear what you need to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this learning of discernment and also learning how to push through the fear and have the courage to be able to say that thing, because there's a lot of unconscious and subconscious programming that we have in running the show, like programs like a computer in the background going, no, you can't do that because of this. We might not think of it that way, but we might get when we go to speak, you might feel the shakes, you might start sweating, a lot of people talk about public speaking as scary as death, right? Like, I feel like I'm going to die. And there's when I go into when I started trying to really build this muscle, I went into something called Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a program that you can do. It's very cheap, where you learn how to public speak. Man, I would sweat. I would have my crystals. I would be saying prayers before it. And one of the things that my guidance system said right before I would get on stage is, you have permission to have fun, right? So we take this fear of being ostracized or not being misunderstood, and we put it so deeply into who we are. If they don't understand this, then we are literally going to die. And what I want to kind of bring up with the throat chakra is it's very connected to the solar plexus.
Yes. It's almost like if you think of the chakras as like a target, like you're playing darts and there's like these concentric circles. The top and bottom, they connect, this big concentric circle, and then third eye sacral connect in another circle, and then throat and solar connect in another circle. So you can kind of see these pairings.
Bullseye. And these two are very, very connected in many different layers. So identity, speaking our truth, right? And then going on a very physical level. If you've ever learned how to sing or public speaking, you know that your breath comes from your diaphragm. The stronger your diaphragm is, aka the solar plexus, the stronger the voice can come out of your throat, out into the mouth and out into the world. So the stronger you are with who you are, the stronger you are able to speak your truth. This is also fire and courage. So you can't have one without the other, almost. And so the more that you build up your self-esteem, the more that you're going to have the courage to say what you need to say. And so healing the throat chakra starts with both of these things kind of coming together, and then it has to move through the energy of the heart chakra. So when we have this sense of worth, then we have to start coming from a sense of love. And when people talk to me about miscommunication or wanting to have this heart talk, have a communication with somebody, I say, start with the heart to heart. You have to be in your heart, and you have to ask them to come from there too. When we're having hard conversations with our significant other, family members, mothers, fathers, children, right? And even friends and coworkers, bosses, where are you coming from? First, you got to come from a sense of self-worth. Then you have to come from a place of love. And then it can come through and you can get into that vibration of harmony. And that's a way to really be able to heal. And I think maybe I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I think this is a way to start healing the way that we communicate, because we have to feel safe.
Yeah. Safety is a big issue when it comes to expressing your truth, especially if it's an uncomfortable truth. If it's a truth that you know is potentially going to be poorly received, or maybe not received at all, but you also know that if you don't speak it, you're somehow doing yourself a disservice. Because if you have an inner truth that's coming from your solar plexus, right? This is a self-worth thing, and it's going through your heart. I really need to express this. This feels really in alignment with who I am. It can get caught here if you don't feel like it's going to be well received or heard. And sometimes you have to allow it to come out anyway. And that process is really, really vulnerable, because you never know how it's going to be received. And we talked a little bit about how women have historically been shut down by their voice, but they're not the only ones, obviously, right? Because there's plenty of men who've been put to death for their speaking. One of the most prominent ones is Socrates. Socrates lived in a society that was based off democracy, like our society, but it had recently been taken over by a small group of people who had a lot of power and control. And he was speaking out against that. And he was speaking out primarily to the youth. He was trying to explain to the youth why this was so important, and they needed to understand that. And the powers that be basically said, you are a detriment to the state by speaking like this to the youth. We need to silence you. And so they literally gave him a drink of, I think it was holly berries, or not, maybe not holly berries. It was different. It was a toxic berry. Hemlock. I think that's right. Hemlock. Anyways, he had to drink it, right, and go through his throat. And that's what eventually killed him. The irony is that we wouldn't even know who Socrates was if it wasn't for his student Plato, who then took the teachings of Socrates, and to protect himself, he would write about Socrates' teachings instead of saying they were his. Even though they were his teachings, through Socrates, he would go, well, Socrates said this and Socrates said that. And he kind of hid behind Socrates as
like
this
Tyrion Lannister, a wise man once
said.
wise
Man once said, which wise man? Well, this wise man, but I'm not going to tell you it was me, because then if you don't like it, I'll get in trouble. But historically, that type of thing happens where people have to create some sort of a filter or buffer to allow themselves to be heard. Other people will do it as like a nom de plume. They'll write something really provocative or something that's against the common narrative, but they'll do it in somebody else's name, or they'll do it in a fake name so that they don't get the backlash.
Well, and this goes back to what Mimi just said too. Like J.K. Rowling, there's a reason why they used J.K. They told her that she needed to use her initials so nobody knew it was a woman.
She also has a nom de plume, and she writes mystery novels.
I didn't know that.
I don't remember the name, but you can look it up. It's pretty easy to find. You just look at J.K. Rowling's, other name, basically, and she's written a lot of stuff outside of Harry Potter. She just doesn't use J.K. Rowling as her name. But it's an interesting thing to have this energy of having to hide in order to be heard. It's a very odd thing, but it's historically it's repeating itself over and over and over again.
It actually brings to mind internet trolls who create, other accounts to say what they're really thinking, or to troll somebody or get that out. What do you think of that? Like, when in regards to the throat chakra and people's trollish behavior these days?
I have a very interesting perspective on this. I think trolls are necessary. Okay. I think they're what we would call a necessary evil.
The troll under the bridge.
Right. Yeah. Because I think of them as okay, so the internet is full of people who have a lot of influence. They're literally called influencers. And these people may or may not be the type of influence that we want our society in general to adopt as their normal way of living. Trolls are there to remind these influencers that they don't have everything figured out. And just because they have the majority of people saying that they're good and that they're doing things in a way that are really, really positive, or whatever it is that people are giving them positive energy, they're getting a majority of that. Let's just say that, or they wouldn't be influencers, right? They wouldn't have a lot of people talking about them. but you need that checks and balance, right? And the throat chakra is very much this kind of Libra balancing scales kind of a concept. If something gets pulled too far the other direction, this justice gets pulled the other direction. And I think things like trolls are there to kind of reestablish some balance. Otherwise, hubris will just take over, and people will just be so caught up in their own, self importance that they lose track of a bigger picture. And I think even though trolls are often overly harsh, the reason for that is because a lot of people are overly confident when it may be misplaced. And I think that there is a natural check and balance system there.
Well, I also want to kind of break this up into kind of two categories, because I hear two different energies too with the troll. There's one, and I end up tending to be this one, which is called the contrarian,
which is a little bit like a troll, but not quite as extreme.
Yeah, it's more like maybe. Like I always do the maybe, right? Like I always go, well, yeah, I hear you, but how about this? Yes, I am the Virgo pain in the ass. And that's that. But I like when people do that to me, because then it's like, oh, thank you. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, okay, yes, be the contrarian.
Nobody likes to eat humble pie because it's nutritious, but it's not delicious.
And I've learned how to welcome it. And then I see some people who just love being the contrarian, which is fine. But then you get these other ones that are just mean, and the trolls that are just bullies to be bullies. And what I think that is that they feel very unheard in their life, and they feel very powerless. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they have this beautiful platform that they can hide behind a personality or an archetype that doesn't get to come out in their everyday life. So they might feel really suppressed at work, and they want to say all these things to their boss, but they can't. So they go on the internet and shit rolls downhill. Oh, yeah. So then they take it out on everybody else because it's a platform where they are safe to be able to be mean. And it's the bullying energy of, like oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, it's always the cops kid is the one that's like the kid that bullies everybody, right? So it's like the one that's always getting bullied at home is the one bullying at school, because they don't know how to express their frustration. So they do it. And so we have a bunch of internet bullies that get to go under a mask to be able to express their frustration and spew it on other people. The amazing thing that the opportunity it has for us, we got trolled last week by a French troll, which was, I thought was it was the best ever. Because when you're trolled by someone in French, because it's such a beautiful romantic language, we're like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's like that moment in the second Matrix movie with the Merovingian. He's like, I love to swear in French. It's like wiping your ass with silk. I think I'm paraphrasing poorly, but the basic idea is like being trolled in another language kind of loses its like harshness, because you're like, I don't know what they meant. I'm sure they meant to be mean, but it somehow doesn't hurt me as much as if it was in English.
Exactly. Yeah, that was funny.
But I see this for me, and it still takes time, because me and Mimi have been on the internet for a long time before it was even like influencers were a word, and it was
back in the day.
Back in our day. And we do get it. I mean, we do get it. It is what it is. They say things. Oh, and I love the ones that are not meaning to be mean, but are like, could you read back what you said and then say it to yourself and see how that feels? Like, oh, honey, you've been looking tired and ugly lately. Have you? I'm like, oh my God, really? Why would you say that to me? Like, I'm putting myself out there every day, and you're telling me I look like that I've looked tired for 6 months. Yeah, maybe because I am. Maybe instead of saying that I look tired, be like, hey, do you need something? You look like, are you, like, and they're saying it in that way, but there's ways to communicate it, right? But it's also this practice of ourselves, of going, these people don't know me. Like, they don't know me.
It's amazing what the internet will give you freedom to do. One of my most interesting comments that I ever had, this was a really long time ago, but somebody commented on my voice actually, and like, oh, you have a child voice. You must have been sexually abused on one of my videos, and I was like, wow, okay, so thanks for that. Like, there was nothing. That was basically the comment, and it has stuck with me for it's probably, I mean, that was when I was in San Diego, so probably 8 years ago that comment happened, because I was just so like, oh, okay, you felt free to go, not knowing me at all, just because you've heard this one aspect of me, my little voice, which I know can be a sign of it. I actually have a different interpretation of my voice, and why it is the way it is, but it's very interesting. And that's kind of what I was thinking about, like with trolls. There's a few, the Gemini in me, Gemini rising, I love celebrity gossip, all of that stuff. And when you go into the comment sections, I'm like, oh my God, if this is our world,
right?
It's not good. Like, people
Yeah.
are so mean. It's very scary to me how crazy, but it's, to me at the same time, like Nikki's perspective, we need a place where we can get it out, and that's like the only safe place to get out all the ugly. I used to have a practice, again, speaking of San Diego, when I lived there. I lived over the Coronado Bridge, which is this beautiful, like, kind of crazy bridge. It's like really high and just does this curve going into the island. And every time I drove over that bridge, I screamed. That was my throat chakra work. Going over that bridge, I would scream and release all that I felt like I couldn't say to my family. I was working for my sister as a nanny at that time, out loud to my partner, whoever. I would scream and release it. And that was so healing for me at that time.
Yeah, what a wonderful transition for you to bring in, because one of the things we haven't talked about yet with the throat chakra is the element of sound. And sound is so healing, but it can also be so destructive. And I really think that there was a time on this planet where sound was a technology that was used to do some major things. That we still don't understand how these ancient civilizations built things like the Great Pyramid at Giza, or the or Machu Picchu. There's a countless number of giant monolithic structures, and I believe it was done with sound. And I think that's because sound is so powerful. I just recently read the Mahabharata, and they talked about infusing things with mantra, and that they use it specifically. Mahabharata is a lot about war. There's a big war in the Mahabharata, but they talk about infusing their weapons with a mantra so that they become powerful, right? And I think that the power of sound is so amazing. If you look over my shoulder here, you see our singing bowls. Obviously, we're talking about something that is near and dear to our hearts, because our work is so much connected to sound. We use the singing bowls in our journey of ascension. We use it in our activations. We use it in everything we do. There's an element of sound, just, our voices as well. And toning with the bowls was how I was able to not only get my system in better alignment, my subtle energy body in better alignment, but I was also able to connect with these energies within me and learn how to communicate internally. And I've gotten to the point now, well, not all the time, but when I'm in a certain state, I can connect with the chakras and actually hear them as a voice in my head with their own personality and their own way of communicating. And that is essentially what Nikki and I attempted to use, that process, that kind of channeling these subtle energies, as a way to give them a voice with our chakra activations that we just created. We had to dip into a pretty deep ceremony state in order to connect with that energy, so that we could give these energy centers a voice and ultimately help people connect to their own personal energy centers, so that it's not about Nikki and I going, these are the chakras and these are how the chakras work. It's, these are your chakras and these are how you develop a relationship with them. And I think that relationship aspect is something that comes from sound, because sound bounces off things. It makes things vibrate. Just standing here or sitting here talking to you guys, sometimes when Nikki and I will make a point, the bowls will literally ring. I don't know if it comes off in the videos or not, but one of us will say something and the bowls will ring as if they're going, yeah, that's right. Like, it's really, really strange, but you kind of get used to it after a while. And I think ultimately what I'm trying to get at is that sound is more powerful than we give it credit for. There is much more to it than that. You go back to the Judeo-Christian lineage, the first thing is God said, let there be light. God didn't just flip on a switch, he said it. The Hindus believe that the entire universe was created by the sound Om. That's the sound of the Big Bang, if you will. I mean, sound is such an influence on our experience, and we are completely bombarded with a cacophony of sounds that we don't even realize. I hear a plane right now flying overhead. We live near an airport. So there's that sound going on. There's a sound of machinery when people are doing work in their yard, or there's, construction going on. We are constantly bombarded by sound, and we don't realize the influence that it has on our experience.
That's really powerful. Well, speaking of sound and all this, the Gemini, I mean, there's so many areas I want to go, but one of the things that's coming up is you're talking about sound, and we don't even recognize like how powerful it is. As I'm hearing like the dissonance of our heater going on right now. Should be comforting, but I don't love the sound. The vagus nerve. I really associate the vagus nerve with the throat chakra. The vagus nerve is here in the neck, and the vagus nerve is responsible for so many things going right in our body, or wrong, right or wrong. And all of these vibrations can definitely affect our vagus nerve. And if you look into various forms of vagus nerve healing, humming or singing, laughing, speaking, those are all ways that you can actually help and heal and tone your vagus nerve. So it's interesting because in any given moment, these sounds are like, I often compare us in the astro to like antennas, but I think we also could be compared to tuning forks. All the parts of ourselves either vibrating with what's going on, or again feeling like to what's going on. So being very aware of what you can control, the music you listen to, the TV shows you are listening to, the internet things that you are watching, all of that is so important.
Yeah, you brought up such an awesome point, because when you're getting sounds that you resonate with, there's a scientific term for that. It's called constructive interference, right? So interference, it sounds like a bad thing because we think of it as you're interfering with me, but interference from the scientific term just means an interaction, right? And constructive means something that's helping, right? Constructive interference is something that's it's a helping interaction. Basically, if you have two sounds, like for instance, we use the example of toning with the singing bowls. I like to play the singing bowl and try to get my voice to match the sound of the singing bowl. Once that happens, I get this warble sound in my ears, this wah, 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 wah kind of a thing happening. That's how I know I'm on pitch. It's like a little, like a little checking system, an indicator, if you will. Then you have something called destructive interference. That's where you have one sound that's doing a wave like this, and another sound that's doing a wave like this, and when they meet, they cancel each other out, right? That's the technology that's used in noise canceling headphones. People don't realize the reason why the noise canceling works is because there is a microphone in the headphone that picks up the ambient noise around you, and it basically gives that ambient noise algorithm uses to create this, like, okay, that's what basically the sound sounds like, and then it creates another sound in the headphones that cancels out that sound. So it does the destructive interference, and once all that has taken place, you're able to hear whatever it is you're listening to with less distractions, with less of that cacophony outside there. So you're actually using sound against sound so that you can better hear sound.
That's interesting. I had no idea that was how that
works. It's cool. It's
the
weird.
masculine.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little nerdy here.
also with constructive interference, when you have things that are vibrating together in harmony with each other, it doesn't just make it sound pretty. What it does is it amplifies it. So when we have people that come together and we then harmonize, it sounds like a chorus of angels, right? It's beautiful. And not only does it sound beautiful, it feels beautiful. When you hear a choir that's singing together, or a choir of children, this innocent sound, right, coming out, and they're in harmony with each other, your heart feels like hopeful. It like it can bring you to tears. And it's because it's hearing. One of the things that really stands out for me with this constructive interference is it was in 2021, and it was in April. It was for our anniversary, and it was the first. There was the first concert that was allowed back in Red Rocks.
Yeah.
And Red Rocks, if you've never been to Colorado, the Red Rocks Amphitheater is absolutely beautiful. It is made from the formation of the stone. And so it's a natural amphitheater. And it has these beautiful red rocks, and you're sitting in the middle, and then there's the stage, and it's amplified in that way. And we went to a Trevor Hall concert, and we had all been in isolation for how long, right? Most of us had not been around each other, but we definitely haven't been in a huge concert venue. And we were all sitting there. And in the middle of one of his songs, he started doing the call and response portion that we all have been in a concert, and you do the little singing thing. And it was like, I think it was like, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way, there's a way. And he was doing that, and he was making us all sing. And it was the first time we heard that sound of that many people singing together after being in isolation. And the whole place, like, it felt like the sound lit up the amphitheater. And I think almost everybody in that place started crying. Because
I don't know
we
how many
missed
people
it.
are watching this, but I hope that they're all doing a drinking game for every time we cry.
And
but drinking kombucha.
But that was one of the moments that I realized that constructive interference can really have a healing, like the healing power of the voices together. And I realized that because we had been in isolation, and I realized how much being in isolation is so painful, and being able to have the constructive interference of us coming together in harmony with each other on the same vibration has medicine. And
huge.
And a lot of things like that very first Woodstock has gone into history because there was a turning point. That was a really hard year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things happened in 1969. If you just do a research of what happened that year.
Yeah. The Manson murders.
And it was a turning point for the war. And it's when we come together in harmony with music, and we come together with a harmony of a message, and that message is being shared together. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to change the course of history.
Yeah. The power of sound, unbelievable. I mean, we just jumped right into music, which is that's part of the throat chakra. Harmony. Like if I had to use one word for the throat chakra, I don't know how to pick between harmony and purification. Because I feel like
they help each other.
Yeah, I feel like they go back to your Gemini thing, Mimi. I think there's kind of a two sides of the same coin here, right? Because harmonizing is coming together with different sounds. Because we talked about constructive interference, and one of the things we didn't mention is that constructive interference, it's the same sound, right? It's basically two things making the same wave pattern, and they amplify each other. But harmony is a little different. Harmony is one sound that's doing this, another sound that might be doing this, and another sound that might be doing this. But when they come together, they fit like pieces of a puzzle. And so that brings up the aspect of community that Nikki already talked about. And that's such a huge part of the throat chakra. We talked about last week when we were talking about the 7 aspects of love. The aspect of love for the throat chakra is philia, which is brotherly love. And on a greater term, it's love for your community.
I like to break it down into 3 words: commune, communication, community. And all 3 have the same root word. And it's this communication, commune, and community. We can't have community if we're not speaking to each other in honest truth and listening with humility and understanding. And that's where we build those bonds.
I think that the listening portion is one that we, the world, need to work on. I find it challenging even for myself. You know, they speak about, there's things that talk about, you know, in conversation, how instead of actually listening to somebody, so often we'll already be planning what we're saying, right? We're up in our head already planning what we're saying instead of actually genuinely listening. And so remembering, I love that I have a very insistent person knocking at my door that is going to have to wait because I'm not going to interrupt this. But you're not listening to me. But you know, so many people will think about the throat chakra as just speaking versus the actual listening portion of communication, of expression. So I love that we're tuning into that part as well. And I'm kind of going to digress a little bit back. One of the things that I kept thinking of when you were talking about like the harmony and singing together, so many, you know, before industrial age, so many tribes, communities, you know, would gather, tell their stories, sing their songs together. And I have to admit, this is a very interesting thing because I've been parts of many different communities. I can get so triggered when they want to sing the songs, and that's something I've been working on. It's a very interesting thing that I experienced. Like, I don't want to do this, but that is such a very real part of community that I think that besides being at concerts together, and it does emerge in various spiritual community, we've kind of lost that part of, I don't know what the right words are, but we've lost doing that, you know, on a regular basis. And I think that might actually be affecting us, being that we're not doing that anymore so much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really reflected on our political system right now. You know, one of the things this country did right when it was being created was it created checks and balances so that things can't go too far one way or too far the other, because there's always this kind of yin yang thing in our political system. And even though the founding fathers weren't really big proponents of this dualistic partisanship concept, it just naturally came about. We couldn't fight it. We couldn't resist it. It's in our nature to have this dualistic way of looking at things. And right now it's the Republicans and the Democrats. Over history, it's kind of changed, and even, you know, Republicans were different and Democrats were different. But the point is that there's always this checks and balance system. There's always this push-pull thing that happens. And in really good times in our history as a country, we've listened to each other across party lines. And we've been like, okay, I don't like what you're saying, but you make some solid points, and let's try to find a compromise in the middle. What we've done now with our political system is we've literally turned anybody who's on the other side of the system into an evil, not even a person really, just an evil entity that must be destroyed. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the right or the left, looking across party lines is like looking at an enemy. And that,
it's the Hatfields and
the Hatfields and the Coys, exactly. They've got more in common than they are different. But because they stole that damn pig, now all of a sudden the rest of us have to suffer. But I think the important part is, the point I'm trying to make is that we've lost the ability to respect the other side of the coin. We've lost the ability to look at something that is society different and opposed to our belief system or our point of view, and still see value in that. because there is value in everything across the board. Even trolls have value. And that is something that we have lost because we are so hell-bent on being right. And if we're right, then everything else has to be wrong. And that dualistic black and white way of dealing with things is always going to cause tension, because that's the nature of dualism, is to cause tension. So what Nikki and I have been trying to cultivate in our own lives, and then broadcasting it into whoever's willing to listen, is this concept that we have right over our shoulder. I keep referring to Ardhanarishvara. That's the masculine and the feminine merging into one being. This divine gray area, if you will, of everything is working together in harmony. And it's not about defeating the opponent, it's about dancing with the opponent. It's about finding a way to work together so that we can so we can actually make some progress. And going back to our founding fathers, they basically set up a system that doesn't work if we don't do that. Because what will happen is one person will be in power and everybody will fight to get power back. And then that person will be in power. And whatever this person did will then be taken apart by the last person. And it's just this back and forth that never accomplishes anything. The only way we can ever move forward is if we come together and find compromise. And I think the throat chakra is very much an energy of compromise.
I kind of like, because the segue with it was the music. And how interesting would it be if Congress all had to sing together before they had to have a meeting? That would be so interesting.
Well, not just Congress. Do you know, Mimi, this is something that I didn't know until very recently, and I consider myself somebody who knows a little bit about everything. There was a time in this country when we first started this country, if you had two people going for president, they were running for president. The person who lost, the runner-up, if you will, was the vice president by default. You didn't have a running mate. You literally had the person who you just tried to beat is now your vice president and is now there because they wanted that counterpoint in the Oval Office. They wanted people in the White House to have to
deal with the counterpoint.
Yeah, to have to mesh and figure that out. So it's not just in Congress; it's also in the executive branch. We have this whole thing where it's like they used to do that, and I don't know why we got away from that. And then now we're in this weird system where if you're vice president, like somehow by default you become the nominee for the next presidential election because Joe Biden was Obama's vice president, so he's the next logical guy, right? He's been in the office, he knows where to put his shoes and his coat, so we might as well just vote him back in. And I love this idea of taking the runner-up for president and making them the vice president. I think we should go back to that because there's a natural balance to that, which kind of takes care of itself.
That's interesting. I had a friend post recently that they were like, why don't we have like Republican and a Democrat, two of them working together? Because I mean, to me, it feels like, all right, it's like the tides go this way, for a little while, and then the tides go this way for a little while. And it's just
and they dismantle each other instead of working together. So
yeah, they spend the first 4 years just dismantling what the last guy did.
No, it's even worse than that, because within the third year they're thinking about re-election.
No,
so they're focused on something else. It's not an efficient system because we don't listen to each other, and we are dismantling instead of building upon each other. And so with this harmony and this communication, if we learn in our own life to listen to the counterpoint with having awareness of our own trigger, like this is where I'm resistant to that, because there is a lot of things being broadcast, and Mimi brought that up too, is we have to be aware of what we're ingesting, right? Mm-hmm. So what we're ingesting in our ears and our eyes, there's a reason why they call it programming. I'm watching that program. Well, there you go. Right. So we have to be aware that we have been programmed to believe that these labels, and we have to be careful with the labels that we put on ourselves and we put on other people, and the conclusions that we jump to because we have a label or an idea that's associated with that particular word. what we talked about earlier are the words are extremely powerful. They are spells within themselves.
Yeah.
So when you start to realize that there are people that have put out on the internet, put out on the news, put out in certain things, that when you hear a word, you fully associate it with, and you jump to a conclusion that it belongs with this word too, which is not necessarily, if you step back, you actually get to know people, that those words might not connect for them. And they might not be in the same bucket. When you have all of the world's issues into two buckets, we're going to have issues, right? Like all of the country's problems, it's either red or blue bucket. Wait a minute. What?
What about all the purple people?
Like, wait a minute. There's social, political issues. There's monetary issues. There's like all of these different things. They can't be really put into two buckets because there's so many layers and things. And as we associate that, we can go into division. And when we go into division, we are dead. We are dead in the water because you are believing it's me against the world. And that is the very definition of victimhood. And once you're in your victim to someone else's belief, then you are going to fight them because they are going to represent your demise. And that is not true. None of this is true. This is all programs. And so when we can take a step back and go, oh, that belief system is like irritating the crap out of me. We have something to work on internally because the trigger is about what's going on with you. I've made this entity the enemy. And because I believe that they're trying to take my rights away. But if we breathe, we sometimes realize, because being in the middle, I'm like, they're doing the same thing they're doing. They're doing the same thing they're doing, right? Where it's that plank in your eye. Take the splinter out of your own eye before you're trying to take the
other way around.
Oh, that.
Take a plank out of your own eye before you try to remove the speck from your brother's.
But at the same time, it looks like a because it's going to be so big, but it's your blind
perspective.
Yeah, it's your blind spot, right? We have to be courageous enough to take ownership of our own blind spots and see where we are more similar than we are enemies. And that is when we can start communicating in a way that's healing the country and not dividing it, because dividing it isn't going to be who of the people. It's going to be who of the people who are in power. And if we are united, unity consciousness is when we start getting our power back, where that programming of disempowerment becomes where it begins to break up, and we realize we have more power communicating with each other through our differences than we do blaming each other. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, it's funny because, like, I'm sure people listening to this are like, well, why did they digress into politics? Politics is throat chakra. That's it. It really is. Like, you want to talk about politics, it lives here. And yeah, there's some passion here, and people really feel about what they believe, but it all just pours out of here. And so, like, if you're talking politics, you're coming from the throat chakra. And that's why people get so vehement when they talk about their politics and their belief system and what it is that they really think is important. And they just get so excited, and you can see their neck turning bright red because there's so much energy in this area. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just needs to be channeled in a way that it can be productive instead of destructive. And right now it's set to a destructive mode. And I think that, yeah, we could all get up on our soapboxes and try to fix the system because we know what's wrong with it. But the truth is that the system is cyclical. There's this cyclical way that things kind of work themselves out. And if we're patient enough, things will naturally start to ease themselves into a different state. And I think that a lot of us will get frustrated with the way things are, and we don't want to be patient. We want things to be fixed now. We want things to be purified now. But purification takes time.
I kind of want to throw this to Mimi because I just pulled the wheel card, and this always reminds me of astrology. And we do have a big Pluto transit in this country happening right now.
Happening this moment right now. Yeah. We're in. What's funny, speaking of like the Pluto transit, because Pluto, to me, its highest expression is empowerment. Pluto is the process of transformation into empowerment. And as you were talking about politics, the throat chakra, and I was going back, okay, here's this cycle, because I feel like a lot of politicians love the power, right? That overactive solar plexus energy, right? But it's so interesting with Pluto of the United States going through a Pluto transit, a Pluto return. So basically, any return in astrology is when a planet returns to the place that it was in the sky when you were conceived, or when the country, the United States, was conceived. So Pluto is in that place again where it was, when the Declaration of Independence and all that came about. So this is a really powerful time for any of us living in the United States. But part of this Pluto return, beyond like the country having power, it's we the people, right? Like the Declaration of Independence.
The first line.
We the people stepping into our power, right? So it's a very potent time. And it's also interesting because this is paving the way for Pluto to be moving into Aquarius. And part of Aquarius energy is community. There's that unity word in communion, communication, community, like Nikki said.
Unity. Yeah.
Exactly. And so here comes Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to ask us, can we come into power together? And I think I go into this all the time. One of the things that I say at the end of every scope, and is I think one of the most important things that I just want everybody to understand, is there's more than enough love in the world for each of us, which means there's more than enough power in the world for each of us. Like Nikki and Ryan saying what they're saying, speaking, using the power of their throat chakra, does not take anything away from what I have to say, from my power of voice. And so if we can recognize, like, you don't have to have a monopoly on the power, that it's okay to share, and in fact that we work better together, that's powerful to me. And so I think that that's going to be one of the lessons of Pluto in Aquarius. But I think there's going to be some push and pull and all that going on to get us there, which will be interesting. Some of that transformation work of Pluto. I also say Pluto has the Plutonic colonic ability. So it will bring the stuff up to the surface. So it will bring the stuff up to the surface for that as well. But if we can keep in mind the communication, the unity, that we are more powerful together. I always, there's some cartoon out there that, it has like, a politician or somebody like standing on their soapbox, and all these people, they're like, don't really like this, but I don't really know what to do about it. And it's like this herd of people versus this one lone figure. And yet we haven't seemed to be able to understand the power of our union yet, right? So I think that this will be a time when we do recognize that, hopefully, and can move together or move forward together. That I think that's the true spirit of the age of Aquarius, coming in for us.
Well, I also think that one thing that came up while you were talking is people don't want to give up the illusion of power. Mm-hmm. And the way that things are right now is it feels as though if I'm in my power, right, then I have to take it from others. Mm-hmm. There's this kind of like, I'm going to take it from you. So everybody needs to be disempowered, so I get to be on the top of the hill. And what we're not realizing is that it's okay to share. It goes back to these like infancy lessons. It's okay to be like, oh, you have your power. And it gave me this aha, and it's going to full circle it around to what we talked about, the fear of public speaking. I think why that process is so scary is like what you said, we're more comfortable on being the one that like listens to the guy who thinks it knows better than being the one that has to be vulnerable and say what they truly feel and be like, I don't agree with you. But what does that make it mean for me then? So instead of me listening to you and going blind to your thoughts, I have to critically think now. I also have to take responsibility for where I did listen without listening to myself, listening to someone else's advice or opinion or whatever that might be that I knew didn't resonate with me. And I have to admit that I didn't listen to myself. How many times do we go, I should just listen to myself, right? Like I knew that was a bad idea. I knew that was a bad idea, but I went along with it because I didn't want to say, I don't think that was a good idea. And then we have to kind of go, this is going to be the hard part. And this is always the hard part with getting from this place of listening to others and not having our own critical thinking to really getting back into our empowerment is taking the responsibility and really feeling the consequence that happened when we didn't listen to our inner guidance, inner voice, and admit that we were wrong. That's humble pie. That's a scary, that's a bitter flavor sometimes.
Yep.
Because now you have
But the bitter medicine is often the most effective.
That's the power of empowerment. Because I had a conversation, I had a reading yesterday, and she talked about this. She said, I think that like empowerment, I have this in my head that empowerment is taking someone else's power. And I'm like, no. And so she asked me what my definition of empowerment is. And I forgot how I said it. And because it kind of came out like naturally, you know, how it kind of just, you connect to how you feel. But the empowerment is the courage to listen to yourself and to what's the word? Not suffer the consequences of but like taking responsibility for the decisions that we make. And the more that you do that, the empowerment is the trusting in your own way. The empowerment is to know that you are sovereign. I am different than Ryan. What I put in my body is good. When I listen to it, is right for me. But if I tell him to do the same thing, obviously he's physically different than me. So it's like trusting your way is your way. And to feel confident in that is a very empowering process. It's a gift that no one can give you. Empowerment is a gift that no one can give you. The only one that can give you your own empowerment is you really knowing yourself and trusting your way, and not trying to put it on others, but to inspire others to find their way.
Yeah, and I think that oh, go ahead.
No, I love what. Go ahead, and then I'll say my thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that is the essence of having a voice as an individual, but then learning how that voice can harmonize with the group is where you take that solar plexus energy and transform it into that cohesive energy of the throat chakra. Knowing your truth and being able to run that through the filter of the heart and then express it through the vessel of the throat chakra is a process. And those, we talked about the throat and the solar plexus being, you know, connected and the heart being in the middle. There is this kind of like trinity aspect of these three working in together to be able to express yourself and then listen and run that through the same filter going the other direction. You know, run it through the ears, listen to the other people, what they have to say, their truth, and then bring it into your heart so you can receive it, and then bring it down to how that affects you, right? And then you take that effect and you run it through your filter of your heart and you express that back out to them. And that equal energy exchange that happens is so imperative.
Yeah, it's like alchemy.
It is. It's communication alchemy. And I think that's what we're missing when we try to cancel people who say things that we don't like to hear.
Absolutely. You know, in you saying that, and then I want to say the other thing that I was going to say, but in you saying that, our chakras work together like a rainbow, right? Like here we bring all the colors forth, we're a rainbow. And I think that's what each of us are on the planet. Like each of us brings our own color forward, and we want the planet to be a rainbow. I'm looking for the card, but the We Are the World card, in the Osho deck has it's a rainbow of little people figures all the way around. And that's what I think we're meant to be, is like, bring forth your color, bring forth your spectrum. The world needs your individual color.
I got you, girl.
Oh, yay, thank you. And going back to what Nikki was saying about power, I love Debbie said something actually I'm going to share. Louise Hay said, learn to listen to your inner ding. I love that. So thank you, Debbie, for sharing that. But you were speaking about personal responsibility. And one of the words that kept coming to me is our personal authority. And that's part of the Capricorn energy as well that we can embrace. And as Pluto is finishing up in Capricorn, is honoring our personal authority, because that's another way that we can just hand that off as like, I'm going to give the authority to somebody else. And while there are times where we need to work with somebody else, your personal inner authority, your inner code, that is so important to stay connected to. And so just keep that in mind as Pluto is going to be finishing up in Capricorn, because I think sometimes we're in a tug of war when it comes to authority. But if you recognize that your authority it's truly yours, to own and honor and yield and wield and all of that, I think that'll help you as well in standing in your personal power.
I want to bring in another card because you brought in the cards. This is the participation card. And these are all these people in their own flavor, different colors, right? We have a blue, a red, a yellow, and a green person. And if you look really closely, it's hard to see with this camera, but one hand is up and one hand is down. One hand is receiving and listening, and one is down giving and sharing. And so when we are in participation, what you see is they're all, like what Mimi said, in their sovereign power, their sovereign color, and their sovereign experience. And what I love about this is they're all in a different direction, if you will, with their own perspective of that direction. But they're all working together. And in the middle is this spiral little circle of all the colors coming into the center together. And so when we can stand in our sovereign power, not apologize for our perspective or our opinion without being la, 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 and not like listening to anyone else's, and not being willing to shift in perspective for a moment to see A, where they're coming from, but B, maybe it's their time to be north and direct, right? With you in the passenger seat going, remember there's a rock there, remember there's a thing there, remember, you know what I mean? But allowing ourselves to work in our sovereign power together in harmony with giving and receiving and reciprocity, like really at the center, we can move forward quickly. What do they say? If you want to move fast, go alone. If you want to move farther, go together. That's, I think, where we're at. And it's okay to be sovereign, and it's okay to go alone for a while. But then sometimes, especially when you start putting more people in your van, like babies and things like that, you realize you do need a village. You realize you can't be isolated because you can't do everything. And whether you like it or not, if you keep putting people in your van, then you are going together because you created them. And that you need to take your time. Yes, it's annoying when the kid has to go pee 16 times and it slows down the momentum, but then you also got to go see some weird sideshow, roadside attraction or something, right? So and it brought joy and brought more depth to the experience. And so when we know ourselves in harmony with others, it doesn't become about the destination. It becomes about what we're cultivating together. And so there's such beautiful medicine in the sovereignty. And then there's such beautiful medicine on allowing those things to be kind of put in the gumbo pot of what we're creating together.
I think that energetically speaking, you're talking about how the astrology is similar to when it was when this country was founded, 1776, right?
Well, there is some similarity, yeah.
Right. So
yeah, especially Pluto, because Pluto's in that same placement.
Yeah. The thing that I find very interesting about that time period is it was called the Enlightenment era. One of the things that was huge in that era, especially in this country, was literacy. People in this country were more literate than they were as a collective at any other time in history. Usually it was just the royalty who could read and write. And the peasants basically learned the language that they needed to speak, but none of them knew how to read and write. Well, one of the things that happened in our country that was unique is that we encourage people to read and write at a very base level of our society. So the lower folks, I guess, if you will, had a higher level of communication available to them that they never did before. And that wasn't just in our country. You know, there was a lot of countries that revolted against their leadership at that time, and democracy really took root. But what's interesting about it is that we didn't really become a democracy in the normal sense. The Greeks called democracy in Greek basically means mob rule. It means that basically what we have on the internet. Everybody attack this person and tell them they're horrible, or everybody go after this person and tell them they're great. You know, we have this mob rule right now on the internet. But what we really have in this country is called a representative republic. So basically, we have a republic that's run by these representatives. They're supposed to represent us as a society, as people. And I think that there is a changing of the guard that is occurring right now. Some of the older folks who have been the representatives for a long period of time are starting to quite literally die out. They're starting to either retire or move on with different things in their lives, or they're literally passing away. And it's opening the door to a new form of representative. And I am going to jump on my own little Nostradamus thing here and predict that, and people will go back to this video in the future and know that I was right. Our future politicians are our current influencers. So the people you see on the internet who are influencing, hold on to your britches, because this is what's coming, right? Because what is it, right? It's all about votes, right? And if you have 300 million people who follow you online and want to make sure that they have the same purse that you have and the same shoes that you're wearing and wear the same makeup as you, better believe it, if you're going to run for office, they're going to vote for you.
Well, Kanye and Kim are trying to do that right now.
I wasn't going to put names out there, but yes, that's a very good point. What I'm trying to say is our vote,
or they tried to,
now has less to do with what we do at the polls, and it has more to do with where we put our attention. If we put our attention towards an influencer or a TV show or the news or whatever it is, that's us voting to see more of that.
You're putting your resources to it. Your time and your energy and your attention are your resources. So be very aware of where you're doing.
And they are finite. You can always make more money. You can always buy a bigger house. You can always get a new car. You can always get more clothes. Those things are reusable, right? Or
your time and your energy
are finite. You only have so much of it. Look at how you're spending it, because that's all you get. You only get your time and energy for this lifetime.
Well,
now, you might get another
lifetime,
lifetime, but you won't remember this lifetime. So while you're in this lifetime, unless you have some sort of a weird connection or somebody can drop you in, I digress. The point is, use your time and your attention wisely, because they're so much more important than money, and they're so much more important than anything. Your time and energy is everything.
Be aware of what you're voting for too, because there's so much stuff trying to grab your attention. We are being bombarded by advertisements at every minute of the day, and everybody is selling something, right? And so,
like us, the Journey of Ascension program. But in our program, very on the throat chakra week, what do?
we shut up.
Yes, we have a
media
detox for an entire week. Mimi, would you care to express what that was like for you?
Media detox is challenging because because we're surrounded by it, right? Like, when do you not have, maybe not the radio so much, but like YouTube playing, or I know Ryan mentioned audiobooks or TV shows
Or
scrolling the internet, right? Yeah, right? Like, or playing games, anything. We are bombarded by all of this outside influence. So on Media Detox Week, in this program, you try to put down as many as you can. I think you said at least 3.
We say 1 to 3. If you want to do all, woohoo! But you don't.
Yeah, there's levels. It's like, what's your big vice? Let that go. Okay, if that's not enough, try your 3 big vices. Let those go. And if you're really, really ambitious, let it all go.
I let my phone go. So I do games and scrolling and all of that nonsense.
And I let my audiobooks go.
And it really does like rejuvenate you.
I had so much energy that week. I didn't know what to do with it. I was just like, I've got all this energy. I want to create. I want to do blah, 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 blah. And it was instantaneous. I didn't have to wait till the end of the week to experience it. So it's not like a detox like you would get with food, right? Detox with food, you're like, oh, I feel like crap. And then you start to feel a little bit better.
There are people who are like, oh, the first day.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but I mean, I felt so much energy, and I think to me it was such an indicator of how much energy I put into media that I don't even realize.
And how much it sucks out of you.
Yes, how much it sucks out of you. Yeah, I stopped reading articles online. I stopped the scrolling. I stopped watching other people's YouTube videos. I don't really watch like TV or anything like that, so that wasn't too hard. But not doing all those things, I was like, what am I going to do now? And I find that I will distract myself. As a Sagittarius, I will distract myself with books. So even though I think books are a great thing to read, I actually didn't read books at that time too, because I was like, I want to actually be present and not like just dive into a book to distract myself from everything. So I also didn't actually do that, even though I thought about it. So it was beautiful, and it was peaceful, and it bred time for other communication. I think I went out, to dinner with my friend who lives around here a few more times and whatnot, and that was really nice, to be like, oh, let's be person to person. So it's a powerful thing, whether you do the program or not, to give yourself a little media detox. That is a powerful process, and you can see how much bombardment there is.
And one thing I want to say is there's nothing wrong with trying to sell something. We have, there's a lot of people that want to put their work out there and they don't know how to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with consuming what you feel like you're consuming. I think what we're wanting to really say is put your money, resources, time, and energy to where your heart is and what you really want to vote for, and be aware of what you're doing. And be aware if someone's trying to hook you with an article that's going to cause you like, oh, it's going to piss me off. I'm going
to. I can't wait to be pissed off. Let me click on this.
For the next 3 hours, because you're going to spin out because you're going to be pissed off about something.
And then you want to find somebody so you can tell them how pissed off you are and make sure that they're pissed off too.
Yeah. And so are we voting for discord or harmony? And if we could just take a step back for a second and go, what hooks me? What's the clickbait that is getting me? What is the clickbait? And if you could just see that and go, is that where I really want to spend my energy? Then you can allocate that time and vote for and put your attention into things that are making you feel a sense of well-being.
Yeah, and I think the detox just gives you that clarity so that you can make those decisions. Because when you're inundated in a habit of doing something kind of ritualistically or at least habitually,
unconsciously,
you don't realize what you're doing. You don't realize how often you do it. You don't realize what you're losing, right? And then when you have that detox, suddenly you have this awareness of like, oh, now I see. And then this is a real important thing about any detox. It's when you start reintroducing things you want to pay very close attention to how you react to those things now that you've done the detox, because that will tell you how
what's in alignment.
Yeah, what's in alignment
not.
and what's not. What's in harmony and what's in discord.
And it's also changing your patterns. That's the moment where you can go, this is what I used to do. Now I have a reset and I can put back in, but do I want to put a little thing that says only an hour of this and like clicks off when I can't do it anymore? Creating different habits and behaviors for you so you can retain your energy is important too.
Beautiful. Well, I want to bring one more little thing through. I kind of wanted to bring this up earlier when we were speaking about things and we went all over the place. But one of my favorite things
always
to connect with when it comes to the throat chakra, using our voice, Nikki mentioned spelling words. The word abracadabra, the true meaning of it is I will create as I speak. And so just as we, are finishing up as the throat chakra, recognizing how powerful, Nikki said, or Ryan said, God said, let there be light. He spoke it, or God spoke it. I'm not into he, she. God spoke it into being, right? So recognize your voice has power in this world. Utilize it. And also recognize what you are saying, also thinking, but specifically what you are saying and writing in this world, you are creating with. And that's a powerful tool for you to be aware of and utilize moving forward. And which is why purification, clearing, and bringing awareness of it, and possibly, doing this program with Ryan and Nicole can be so powerful because it can help get you deeper in tune with your throat chakra so that you are creating as you speak very intentionally.
And what we really are offering is a system for you and a permission slip and structure for you to get to know yourself. A lot of times we are prioritizing unconscious things that are catching our attention. But when are we really allowing ourselves to prioritize our own relationship? And you can do that on your own. But what we did, Ryan and I created a beautiful structure every day, give you something to contemplate, to look at, to listen to for yourself. And we always encourage, we give you guys tools, but we always encourage, okay, stop listening to our playlist and make your own. Do your own. Listen to your own guidance. It was funny. My godmother did our program last time, and we have a lot of eclectic music. We have anything from 70s music, 80s, 90s. Now, we have music from everywhere.
Just not enough Barry Manilow.
Not enough Barry Manilow.
Or Donny Osmond, apparently.
So she's like, I didn't connect to the song, so I had to put Barry Manilow. And I'm like, okay. Right? And so she has playlists of Barry Manilow. But that's the beauty of it is her voice speaks in Barry Manilow. And, mine doesn't. But that's okay. Different generation. But this is a system to be able to give you your own little tools, whether it be music, whether it be writing, whether it be meditation,
singing bowls,
whatever you gravitate to, we have it in the program. Because I'm a Gemini rising and I go, here's all of them. You choose yours. And what we are offering, not just selling, but what we're offering is a place and a permission slip to be able and set out that time to be able to know your sovereign way, not our way. You might integrate part of our way. It's your way. And that's important. And then we commune together and go, oh my God, what happened yesterday? And we have that beautiful community because when you're doing this journey, it's like climbing a mountain. We're all going to have the same weather. We're all one might go in a cave and go, oh, I was totally saved from that yesterday. And the rest of us are like, holy shit. But you have that camaraderie, which is also very beautiful. You're going on it on your own, in your own life. But at the same time, when you connect with each other, it's like, yeah, I did feel that. And that's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. It's nice to, Nikki and I, people like to say misery loves company. We like to say misery
loves empathy.
Because it's a lot of work, and we're not going to lie. The program is not, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. There's some heavy treading there, but that's how you get work done. I mean, that's how you transform. That's how you accomplish
That's also
things.
how you build muscle.
Mimi, are you still doing your readings for the year, or?
Definitely. I am swimming through my 2023 readings, and I'll be offering them probably all the way through January, maybe even into February, just because I have a lot of them lined up. But my client last night was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited! I was so excited to do this because your reading last year was like so spot on." She's like, "I go through month by month." She's like, "Oh my God, that's so on point." So if you would like a guide month to month, what your 2023 is going to be like, you know, digging into some of the major planetary shifts and everything and anything that's coming up for you, I highly recommend the year ahead reading. You can, of course, always get a half-hour reading or a timed reading. But yeah, the year ahead is definitely profound. I'm like, I need to do one for myself. So I know what, always have a running idea, like this is what the astro is doing. But I go through, I have cards for every month, and it's fun. I've been enjoying them. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mimi, for letting us talk about the throat chakra.
Woo. I think we had a beautiful clearing today for the throat chakra. Do you want to take us out with the meditation? And
I would be delighted. All right, everybody. Go ahead and find yourself in a nice, comfortable position with your spine erect. Nice, tall, long antenna. And close your eyes. Close your mouth. Breathe through your nose. Envision yourself encapsulated in this bright blue light that we've been protected by, that's encouraged us to communicate with integrity, with honesty. And we're going to condense all this wonderful energy back down into the throat with each exhale, letting the energy just shrink down. To the size of a beach ball. To the size of a basketball. To the size of a softball. To the size of a golf ball. To this beautiful tiny point of blue light resting right inside of the center of our throat, where all this wonderful energy of communication resides. Take this energy with you and communicate well today, speaking your truth and taking the time to listen to other people's truth. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Come back to this space and time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, friends, for joining us live. As always, I will provide the links to email me for a reading, the links for Nicole and Ryan's program down below this video, which will be on the Gaia Blooming Facebook page and YouTube. So check that out if you would like to reach any of us. And have a beautiful, expressive day. Oh, it looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, and with the R's, Mimi will put in a Gaia Blooming promo code. And so that gives you like a very significant chunk off of the journey. So make sure at the point of purchase to put the Gaia Blooming promo code. You literally get like $300 off. So, and it's almost 50%. So what I would say is make sure you get that little code because it'll serve you well.
Beautiful. All right. Have an expressive full moon day, everyone.
I must stay in touch.